Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing my June wrap up. So in June I participated in Whatever You Want-a-thon, which was a readathon hosted by Maddie from Book Bars and Blog. I set myself a goal of 7 and I read 9, and I got our team 8,125 points. I actually had a pretty slumpy beginning of the month. I just did not really want to read. I rewatched Avatar: The Last Airbender. Then I also rewatched all of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and I played a lot of The Sims, and the only way I got a lot of reading done was audiobooks, and a lot of the books that were actually on my TBR did not have audiobooks, and so I did not read them. But now let's talk about my stats for the month. In June, I read 4,567 pages, which is a very nice number, across 9 books. In total, I listened to 84 hours of audiobooks. I do listen on 2 or 3 times speed, but that is still more audiobooks than I've read any other month. So a lot of audiobooks were listened to this month. As I said, I was playing a lot of The Sims. For the genres, I read 1 contemporary, 7 fantasies, and 1 graphic novel, which was like a fantasy sci-fi graphic novel. For the intended audience, 6 were adult and 3 were YA. And then for the format, 2 were ebooks, 2 I read physically, 1 was the audiobook, and the other 4 were a mix of both the audiobook and either an ebook or a physical book. Finally, our star ratings, which this month is the best so far. So I read 2 4-stars and 7 5-star books. 7! I think 3 of them were rereads, but that's still 4 new 5-star books for me, which is impressive. And that gives me an average rating of 4.78 for the month. So it is definitely my best reading month for ratings, but it's my second best month for like page count. So I will take that. So the first book that I read in the month was Saga Volume 1 by Brian K. Vaughan and illustrated by Fiona Staples. So I read this because it was a host favorite and just something quick to start off the month. So this graphic novel follows 2 soldiers who are on the opposite side of this like galactic war, who have fallen in love, and at the very start of the comic they have a child. But now, because of this, both sides of this war have a common goal, which is to get rid of them. And so it's just a lot of running. I give this a 4 out of 5 stars. I feel like I'm getting better at like rating them because I have to rate them different from like actual full-length novels because they're a different format. But I still haven't like exactly got it down. But I did actually really enjoy this. It's not a new favorite or anything. Like, I guess I can see why so many people love it, but I just didn't personally like adore it with every fiber of my being. But I still give it a 4 stars, and that is obviously a very good rating. I always find it very difficult to talk about comics because I'm just not a very visual person. I did enjoy the characters. I thought they were very interesting, and they were quite well developed for like a 100 and whatever paged graphic novel. One thing that I did like, because as I said, I haven't read that many comics, graphic novels, anything, but in one of the ones that I have read, which is The Shades of Magic, which I do actually really like those comics, but I feel like the action scenes in those weren't very clear, whereas in this, like, you could tell what was happening. So I did like that. I'm interested to see where the story is going, but this is kind of forgettable for me because I'm already kind of forgetting what it's about. But also that's the case for like a good few books in this list, because I swear June was like the longest month ever. I can't believe that I read Saga this month, and same with like The Hero of Ages. I feel like I read those like 3 months ago. Speaking of The Hero of Ages, that was the next book I finished. So The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson, I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. And this was my lowest rated of the entire trilogy. Actually went downhill with every single book. So the first book was like 1 point off a 5-star in CAWPILE, and so I was so convinced that book 2 and 3, they were going to get better and they were both going to be 5 stars, and instead I liked them less and less. So this series follows a world where allomancy exists, which this is a magic that you ingest metals and then they give you certain powers. And if you control one, you are missing. If you control all of them, you are mistborn. In this, Kelsier is putting together a group of people to take down the Lord Ruler, who has been ruling for like 1,000 years, and he's not the greatest guy. And he comes across Vin, who is a Mistborn, and so he kind of recruits her. I wrote like a paragraph on Goodreads about this, and I literally started off saying this is going to be an oddly negative review for a 4-star review, and I will say that disclaimer here. Because honestly, as time goes on, I'm forgetting the good stuff about this book. I'm just kind of mad. I was told this is one of the best endings to a series ever, full stop. It's incredible. No? So, I will admit, this is a good book. It is well written. I do enjoy Brandon Sanderson's writing style. It is very straightforward. I quite enjoy that. I love the magic system. And I really enjoy the characters. But I'm just disappointed in this series. The way people have spoken about these, I expected to love them. I expected to read them, fall in love, have a new favorite series of all time. And maybe I set it up for failure. Probably. I kept waiting and waiting and waiting for this series to blow my mind. And it never happened. It's a solid series, and the good definitely does outweigh the bad, but I do think it is overrated. And as I said, I've heard so many people say that this is one of the best finales they've ever read to a series, and it was just so anticlimactic for me. I guessed everything that would happen. Yeah, like, I heard that there were like 2 things at the end. 2 of them I had guessed. So, one, well, I only kind of like, I half thought it. And the other, I was like sure about. But there was like one part of that second thing that I didn't expect. And yeah, I remember finishing it and just being like, that's it. I did enjoy reading this. I liked the journey. And as I said, I liked the characters and all of the like politics and all of that. I did enjoy that. But I felt every single book was more build up. And even this book, like I thought The Well of Ascension was like the main build up for this book. And you would get like straight into it. But like, honestly, that much of the book is resolution. Maybe not even. Like, I wanted more. And I do think I just set impossible standards for these books to reach. So like, don't be mad at me in the comments being like, oh, you just have no taste. I do think it is partially my own fault for just like hearing so many great things and building them up so much in my head. Like, I don't think any book in the world could have reached the standards I set. But like, I still can't help but be a little disappointed. Now that I've read this whole series, I do think I have readjusted my expectations for future works of his. I have Warbreaker on my shelf over there, so that will probably be the next one I read, but I think I'm going to take a small break before I dive back in. I know that was pretty negative, but this is a 4-star, and it's like a decent 4-star. So like, don't think I hate this. Like, that is simply not true. I gave it a 4-star. I liked it. So I'm not going to talk about the next book for long because it's a reread. And I only reread them back in like September, but I was falling behind on my TBR, and as I said, I was playing a lot of The Sims and I just wanted something to listen to, and so I reread A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is the UK collector's edition, this is the US paperback, but I actually listened to the audiobook, which I would not recommend the audiobook. I did not really like the audiobook. This was a 5-star for me. It was a reread. I love these. This is my 3rd time reading them. Yes. I reread them last September, so you can like go check out my September wrap up because I talked about them there. But I guess I will like slightly talk about it. So this series follows Kel, who is an Antari, who is a blood magician. He can travel through the different Londons. So there's parallel Londons. And so his job is kind of to pass messages to the monarchs of these countries. On the side, he also has a little smuggling business, which is very illegal. And one day he smuggles something he shouldn't, and he puts his London at great risk. And so he has to go and try and stop it with the help of a Grey London thief called Delilah Bard. I love this series. This series is like a hug for me. But I would say I listened to the audiobooks. I listened to it on like 3 times speed. It took me like a day to read it. I did not like the audiobook very much. Like, the voice, that was not what I expected. Like, no. So I'm not really going to say much. I do love these. I will not take any criticism. This story, it just means a lot to me. I read it like for the first time 3 years ago, and yeah, it's just like a real comfort read for me, which is kind of weird because like I guess I think most people's like comfort read is like a fluffy romance or something, but me, I'm like, London's. Yeah, I love the story. I love Kel and Rye and their brotherly relationship. It really reminds me of me and my sister. I love elemental magic, which is the main like magic system in here. Obviously there is also blood magic, but like I'm a sucker for some elemental magic. And also, so when I finished the audiobook, I went and looked in this because I knew there was like some bonus content at the end of it. And there is a like short story, like it's like 3 pages long, called Brothers, and it's like the very first time Rye and Kel meet. And I almost cried on it because I love them so much. So then book number 4 that I read this month is The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty. This was a brilliant finale to the series. I have fallen in love with the series. I read City of Brass, I think in like February maybe, and I actually, like, I gave that a 4-star. It took me really a while to like get into it, and so like I wasn't like the biggest fan of it. And then I read Kingdom of Copper last month and I fell in love with it. Everything that happened in the first book was amplified and just built on and made so much better. And the same can be said for The Empire of Gold. I loved this. It is big, but it is incredible. So this series, we follow Nari, who is a con woman in 18th century Cairo, and one day while pulling off one of these cons, she accidentally summons a Jinn warrior who then takes her back to the City of Brass, because the only way she could summon him is if she had some sort of Jinn blood, and she ends up getting involved in the politics of this world, the magic of this world, and I love it. This is the final book, and yeah, what am I to do now that it's over? I picked this up nearly as soon as I got it because I pre-ordered it for my birthday, and because like it was this paperback edition that I wanted because it matches my other ones, and it arrived like one of the first weeks of June, and I was like, I must read this now. And also it was on my TBR, but like also I was like, I want it now. It's brilliant. Like, that's all I can say. I loved the way things went in this because we get to see like a little bit of Nari from the first book in this and see how much she has changed along the way. There's not really much I can say because everything that I want to say is like spoilers. But yeah, this was a brilliant finale. It's my favorite book in the series, and I do think probably at some points things are maybe a little bit too convenient and too easy, but I don't care. As always, I loved Nari and Ali, and I loved their friendship. See, I can't say what I want to say because that would spoil what's happening. Basically, where everyone is, I really liked it, and we got to see Ali's siblings, I guess, take charge of things, and I really enjoyed that because I feel like we got only like glimpses of them and we didn't get to see like their true selves. A lot of the time we were seeing like what they put on for other people. This is definitely a series that I'm going to reread time and time again, and it is now officially one of my new favorite series, so yes. And also I'm definitely going to read whatever S.A. Chakraborty comes out with next, and hopefully it'll be as good. And so that was obviously a 5 out of 5 stars. So then book number 5 I read this month was another reread for me, and that was Bloodwitch by Susan Dennard. I was reading this for Witch Lands Along, which is hosted by JD Reed Reads, and also because I myself was planning to reread them before Witch Shadow came out. Just a hint for you, that is next that I'm going to be talking about. Actually, I'll just talk about the 2 of them together. So book 5 and 6 that I read were Bloodwitch by Susan Dennard and then Witch Shadow by Susan Dennard. Witch Shadow has been my most anticipated release of the year. I have been waiting for it for like a year and a half, and it did not disappoint. So this series follows Safi and Isolde, who are thread sisters. At the start of the very first book, Safi and Isolde are trying to steal back some money that Safi lost in a card game, and they accidentally captured the attention of a blood witch, who then starts tracking them, and they have to flee because Safi is a truth witch, which is a power a lot of countries would like to have on their side, especially with the 20-year truce coming to an end and war on the horizon. And so much has happened since then. So much continues to happen. I have a reading vlog where I talk about the 2 of these. I still don't have my copy of Witch Shadow. I had to buy the ebook in the end because my copy still hasn't been dispatched. I'm okay. I'm fine with it. I reread this. I tabbed it all up. Look how many tabs there are, guys. So many tabs. A lot of these are like favorite moments or questions or answers, etc, etc, etc. And then the yellow ones are just for chapter 50, which is one of the best chapters of any book ever written, ever, full stop. I'm not really going to speak about them because you should check out that reading vlog. There is a non-spoiler section and then there is a spoiler section at the end. So if you have read Witchshadow and want to discuss it with me, please do. I have so many thoughts. Both of these books were 5 out of 5 stars for me. Witchshadow is now my favorite book of the year so far, overtaking Fool's Errand. Actually, reverse it a little bit. The Empire of Gold actually took over Fool's Errand as my favorite book of the year so far, and then Witchshadow took over The Empire of Gold as my favorite book of the year so far. I don't include rereads. I love the story. I love Adrian and Isolde, and in this book we get a lot of like that dynamic, and I love them. And I love Adrian. He goes through a lot. We learn a lot about his backstory in here, and I remember last year when I read it for the first time, just as soon as I finished this, I wanted to go back and reread so much of it because we get a good few answers in this one, but I was like, I feel like I've missed so much along the way and must reread immediately. In my vlog, I do say that this is my favorite Witchlands book for character like development and character reasons, whereas Witchshadow is my favorite book in the Witchlands series for plot reasons. I think that has a really interesting plot and so much happens. And also in Witchshadow, we finally get answers to a lot of the questions we've been answering. A lot of questions. Like, there is so many answers given in that book, and I'm like, it's finally all coming together. We're getting near the end. I was so nervous going into it because I was like, I have a habit of setting expectations way too high. And since every book in the Witchland series I have been loving more and more and more than the previous, I was very nervous about Witchshadow because I was like, how can it live up to Bloodwitch, because I love that so much. And it did. And it was incredible. I was screaming. There was actual moments that I had to put the book down because of things that happened. And there was one reveal in it that really got me. I was like, so I felt really stupid. So that was fun. Anyway, so I gave Bloodwitch and Witchshadow both 5 out of 5 stars. I love them. Please read the Witchland series. I love it so much. So then book number 7 that I read this month was another reread. And that was A Gathering of Shadows by V. Schwab. As I said, I was falling behind on my TBR. I was falling behind on my goal because I wanted to read 7 books. And I was like, okay, this isn't gonna happen. I can reread these in like a day. And so I was like, let's do it. Again, I put on the audiobook, which there's different narrators for this one. So the audiobook I would say is slightly better in this one because there is actually a woman who is narrating for Lila's perspectives. But I still don't like the man who is narrating. It is a different man, but I still didn't like him narrating. I don't know why, but I didn't expect like that kind of a voice for Kel. Again, I won't tell you what this is about because I literally just spoke about it a few minutes ago. But I will say, once again, I'm confused what order my favorite V. Schwab book is, because when I first read A Darker Shade Magic, the first one was my favorite, then the second, then the third. And then last time when I read it, this was my favorite book, and then it was like the third and first like tied, and now this time I'm like, no, I think the first is my favorite again, and I don't know. And so it changes every single time, which is fun for me. And like this one, I can see that it is like yes, there is like a small bit of its own plot, but a lot of it is building up for the third book. And there is also like a slight magical tournament element in here as well to like break up, I guess, the books, to have something happening in here. But it is definitely a lot of setup, and I don't mind. Which a lot of the times I will complain when I'm like, oh, middle book syndrome. This isn't all set up because there is a magical tournament in here. But when it's a book series that I really love and characters I really love, I do not care if it's middle book syndrome. I really do not. And that is the case with this one. And also with the next book I will be talking about. This is obviously a 5 out of 5 stars if you couldn't guess. And I'll probably be rereading the third one in, what month am I in? July. I'll probably be reading the next one in July. And my 8th book of the month was The Golden Fool by Robin Hobb. And I also gave this 5 out of 5 stars. So this book took me like 3 days to finish. With all of Robin Hobb's books, I put the audiobook on and I read along at the same time because that is the best way to get information. Always like little sneaky things that you don't pick up on. And so the best way for me to get information is to do both of those. And that's literally been what I've been doing since like book 1. I am now officially halfway through the Realm of the Elderlings, which gave me a slight existential crisis. I was like lying in bed for like an hour at that point, and I just kept thinking about these books. Okay, this isn't really spoilers because it's like theory like that I've had since like the very first book, but like the further into it I get, the more I know. I'll put like spoilers on the screen. Wait until that's down to listen again. So the further I get into this, the more I know in my heart that Fitz cannot have a happy ending, and that devastates me. The thought of that actually hurts me, and I'm now 8 books in. I have 8 books to go. 4 of them are like the dragon books, which like obviously Fitz isn't in, and I know in my heart that Fitz is not going to get a happy ending. That is actually going to destroy me because I've already spent like a year and 3 months with Fitz slash also like others. And I still have like another year and 3 months to go. And I'm going to be so attached to him by the end. And I just know in my heart that it's not going to end well. And that hurts. So, I love this. But the thing is, as I said when I was talking about A Gathering of Shadows, this is definitely a filler book, which I have never said that about any other Robin Hobb book. Like Royal Assassin, which is the second book in the Fire Seer trilogy. No, that is not filler. Like, there's stuff happening. A lot of stuff happening. And same with The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb. That was actually, I think, my favourite book in... Yeah, I think that was my favourite book in the Live Ships trilogy. It had its own, like, plot in there. And this is, like, the only one that I can think of is, like, setting up for the third book. Like, obviously, within those other second books, she has been setting up. But they've had, like, their own plots. This is the only one that I can think is very much a setup book. And yet I still gave it 5 stars. Oh wait, what this series is about. So this is the 3rd series in the Realm of the Elderlings. This is the 2nd book in the 3rd series. And this series follows on 15 years after the Fire Seer trilogy, where we meet Fitz, who I love a lot. And in that series, he is left at the keep because he is the illegitimate son of King in Waiting, Prince Chivalry. And his father flees because he's like, whoops, didn't mean to do that. He is raised by Burke, who is like stable master, and he then one day, King Shrewd is like, I think I'm gonna make use of you and train you as an assassin. And so much bad things happen to poor Fitz. And then this, as I said, it takes place 15 years later. And basically Fitz has come back to Buckkeep and there's stuff happening. If any other book was like this, I would probably be like, 4 star, 3 or 4 star. But it's Robin Hobb, so it's 5 star. And the thing is, again, this is because I love the character so much, and there was like a domestic kind of feel to this book. Like, do you know, like I don't read a lot of fan fiction, but like, do you know fan fictions which are just like fluffy domestic stuff? Which obviously, I mean, there's still like bad stuff happens in here because it's Fitz. Bad stuff always happens to him. But yeah, there is just like that domestic feel to it, which like I just really loved because like 60% of the book, nothing completely terrible happens in here. So I liked that. And also in here we also get a lot of connections to the live ship traders. We get to see characters that we saw in there. We get a lot of like cute moments, I think, where we see how much like Fitz kind of misses people who used to be in his life and how much they still miss him. And like that like really hurt my heart a little, but it also made me like kind of happy. And yeah, 8 books down, 8 to go. I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life when I'm finished this read along, because I mean I'll have given like 2.5 years of my life to this read along, and like I honestly think as soon as I finish the last book in this, I'm going to go back and reread them all. And there's nothing you can do to stop me. The amount of times I want to reread Assassin's Apprentice, and like all the way up, is a lot. I always want to reread it, but I'm like, you're in the middle of reading the entire series. Don't go back and confuse yourself. But like also that means I have to wait another like year and 3 months before I reread them. And I really want to reread them. And then, so I finished The Golden Fool in the afternoon of the 30th. And then, which was like the last day of whatever-a-thon. And so I was like, I'm done. I can just relax. And then they announced last minute sprints, you know, final sprints. And I was like, I have nothing to read during sprints. And so I was like, I will read like a novella or a graphic novel or something. And so I went on Scribd, I had a nosy, and I came across The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I read With the Fire and High last January? Question mark? And I give it, I think, a 4 or 4.5 out of 5 stars. I can't remember. And I really enjoyed it. And I read this because I had heard great things about her, especially her books written in verse. But I was terrified of reading a book in verse, so I was like, this one is, you know, standard prose. Yes, this one is like standard prose. I will read this. And I did. I really enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, I enjoyed her writing. I will one day get to The Poet X. And I just put it off for about 1.5 years now. The audiobook was there, and I knew I couldn't read it because I'm not a poetry person. I've never really liked poetry. That's kind of why I've been putting it off reading it. But I also heard such great things, so I did want to read it. But I had heard great things about the audiobook, but the audiobook was never on Scribd for me. So yesterday I saw it on Scribd and I was like, it's time. The Poet X is a book that is written in verse, and our main character, she feels kind of like trapped in her life, and her only escape is her writing. And throughout the book she discovers like slam poetry, and it's a really good outlet for her. And her mother is not very approving of that, and she has like a lot of questions about like religion. She doesn't really believe it, but her mother is like quite devout. And I give this 5 out of 5 stars. And I think this is my most surprising read so far this year. I never would have thought I'd give it 5 out of 5 stars. I thought maybe 4 out of 5 stars at most. I wanted to give it a go, but I didn't think I would love it. And I give it 5 out of 5 stars easily. And I can't believe I put it off for so long. But I would like to say, I don't think I would have enjoyed it if I read it by myself. But because I have that audiobook, it was beautiful. And the way, because it is narrated by Elizabeth Acevedo, the way she read it was incredible and so emotional and impactful. I was amazed by her ability to tell a full story in such few words. She has to be so deliberate with her choices. And again, I know nothing about poetry. And so like, I'm sure people who like actually know about poetry probably read that and then see a whole new story to it, like the technicalities of it. And like the only thing I was like, that's a page of haikus. That was all I knew. Can you believe I got a really high grade in my English exam in schools? I wouldn't. Like, I'm sure people who actually like poetry and actually study poetry can see a lot of like the beautiful technical aspects in it. That ain't me. And I loved it. But I loved it for the story, and it was beautiful. It made me tear up, which, if you know me, never happens. Like, I never like fully cry at books, and so like the best you can get from me is like tearing up, and even then, not that many books do it, and this one did. And like, I was thinking, okay, this is a 4-star, and then I don't know, it was like 75% of the way through, and I can't remember the exact like chapter or anything, but I started tearing up and I was like, oh my god, this is a 5-star. So this is officially like one of my favorite standalones ever, up there with Radio Silence and Lost Boy by Christina Henry. Those are my 2 favorite standalones of all time. This is now definitely up there with it, and it is definitely like also one of my favorite contemporaries. I never would have predicted I would be calling it like one of my favorites. I never would have guessed that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.